Freelancing is a crazy career, and the last month has absolutely been no exception whatsoever. We've had gear breaking, we've got projects in every stage of the pipeline and deadlines flying all over the place. It's been an absolute madhouse. It's a grind, but I love it. That said, the last few weeks have been pretty taxing. So today we're going to talk about this little film that I shot down in Yosemite at the Firefall back in February. It's not some award-winning masterpiece. It's really just a small film that helps remind me that in these times where life is crazy, the world is still beautiful, and in the grand scheme of things, my problems are kind of small. So let's get into it. All right, back in February, I got to go down to Yosemite to spend some time with my buddy Ryan Unger. He had some permits to go see the Firefall. If you don't know what the Firefall is, it's this incredible phenomenon that only happens for like 2 weeks at the end of February, where the sun as it's setting hits just this thin veil of water that's coming off of El Cap. Absolutely stunning. Go look up some images, get some permits, go next year. It's amazing. So today we're going to be talking about this little film that I ended up putting together after going down to see the Firefall. We're going to talk about why I made the film, what really is the film, and how we made it. So let's hop into it, starting with the why. So I would say this film has a pretty untraditional why. I really didn't go to Yosemite to shoot this film, or really any film. I was just going down to Yosemite to have some time away. I was going through a rough season with some weird job transitions, and I just needed some time away. And Yosemite is a place that's really close to my heart. I grew up just a few hours outside the park. I've been there a ton of times. I've spent a lot of time there, and I have a lot of deep memories that take place inside the park. My good friend Ryan Unger is based out of Oakhurst, which is just outside the park boundary. So I ended up booking some tickets to Fresno. He was able to pick me up, and we were able to spend some time in the park. And although I wasn't there to film, I was there to use my camera because we were going to see, he had permits to see the Firefall. It's this incredible natural phenomenon, only happens for a couple weeks in February, or it can only happen for a couple weeks in February, and that's if the light's good, if you don't have clouds, all this stuff. So it's this wonderful community event where just, photographers from all over the planet flock to this one little patch to shoot this one specific photo. And so that's what we were going there to see. But that still doesn't answer the question of why I made this film. Even though I wasn't going to Yosemite to film this or do any pre-production or really have any prior intentions of making this film, at some point along the way, I had to have a why. And to get to the why, we need to talk about the Firefall itself for a minute. If you've never been to the Firefall, there's really no way to describe it. You can look at photos of the actual phenomenon, and those are beautiful, they're incredible. But the event that is Firefall is really unique. Every year, thousands of photographers flock to Yosemite Valley just to shoot this one photo. And I'm sure if you've seen photos of Yosemite before, it's a photographer's paradise. People come from all over the world all the time to shoot Yosemite Valley. But this specific event attracts thousands and thousands of photographers that are all standing in one very specific spot to shoot this one very specific photo. And it's thousands of photographers, and it's all sorts of different photographers from beginner. You've got people with $20,000 cameras standing next to people with, their iPhone on a tripod. It's a beautiful community event. You've got these people who've been shooting the Firefall for 20 years that are, they're kind of like the sages that are, welcoming people in and telling people where to stand and kind of coaching people that have questions, and everyone's chatting, everyone's interacting, and there's just, the ground is littered with hundreds and hundreds of tripods of all these people who are waiting hours. It's February, so it's freezing, and we're all just standing there waiting for this 2.5 minute event of the sun just kissing this veil of water coming off the side of El Cap. It's really a hard event to describe. The community aspect of this event really just brings in so much joy. Like I said, seeing people with their iPhones on a tripod, or just a basic entry-level camera on a tripod, and just that unity, nobody's comparing gear. Everyone is just staring at this giant rock waiting for the sun to set. And that's just an amazing feeling. Just that level of community and camaraderie, and just being there for something that's bigger than yourself. That was a big moment. Okay, so really, why did I shoot this? I mean, filming, taking pictures, working with the camera, filming, those are just huge stress relievers for me. And I mean, really, what better place to relieve stress with a camera than Yosemite? Really, I would say truly the why, is if you've never been to a place like Yosemite, you just feel small. You're standing at the bottom of a valley and everywhere around you is 3,000 feet of cliffs everywhere. And the valley is small, so everything just feels massive except for you. You feel tiny. And for me, it's always just been this incredible reminder that my problems in the grand scheme of things are minuscule. So for me, making this film, it was just a way to remind myself that these moments, of being by the river and being in places of community like this and just, cooking dinner in a parking lot, these moments of feeling small are just so important to like my mental health and my ability to keep doing this, to keep creating because of, weeks like last week where things went crazy and gear started to break. Just remembering that like in the grand scheme of things, those are really small things. So really the why of me making this film was to be able to hold on to those moments. So what is this film? I really don't have too much to say about that because the what and the why here blend in so much, there's no client. But really what this film is it is a snapshot of that trip for me to remember what those moments are like, so in these moments of turmoil and chaos, I can look back at that peace, that calm, and just remember to feel small. So what it is really just that snapshot. So now we need to talk about the how, because even though I didn't really have an intention of making this film still got made. So there's still a how, and I think that's super important to talk about. Because really the pre-production phase, kind of like I mentioned earlier, there really wasn't any pre-production. This film just kind of like came out organically. But after the first night of shooting the Firefall and just kind of seeing the community and seeing everything that was happening and knowing that Ryan and Ellie and some other folks wanted to come in and do hot chocolate and pancakes for the second night of Firefall, I kind of knew that I'd be able to get a really good sequence there. I've been with Ryan Unger in the field where he's done this, like, call it trail magic, where you just show up with a bunch of food and cook food for people that are like hiking the Pacific Crest Trail or the John Muir Trail or something like that. So I knew that this was a chance for me to get Ryan in his element. And I've been working on a documentary on Ryan Unger for the last couple of years, so I knew going into this trip that there's a chance that I could get some shots for that. So even though I wasn't going to Yosemite to film anything, I was still going with all of my equipment. I still had, 2 bodies, I still had all my lenses, I still had all my audio equipment, knowing that something like this could happen. So even though I didn't plan to shoot this specifically, I was prepared to really shoot anything. Once I knew that I was going to mic Unger up to try and shoot the sequence of him going out and inviting people in for pancakes and cocoa, I had a little bit of like an impromptu pre-production planning session of figuring out, how am I gonna mic him up? What lenses do I wanna use? Where do I wanna be? And just kind of getting the general feel for what's gonna happen at the production the next day. So in a sense, that was some pre-production of figuring out, like, knowing what lenses I'd want to use, what filters I'd need on the camera, where everyone was going to be. But it wasn't anything like formal, writing it down, storyboarding it out, really just preparing myself mentally and knowing what gear I'm gonna need for that day of shooting. All right, so into production, how do we actually get this thing shot? Well, for the most part, we use the basic documentary kit that I use on pretty much everything, except for adding the 80-400 for those long shots of like the clouds moving around El Cap and the long shot of the Firefall, obviously. Other than that, really just using the 85 and the 35 for pretty much everything. The only shot that uses the 35 is that opening shot of Unger cooking. Other than that, everything else is done on the 85. The 85 was really the natural choice for working in and around the crowd where Unger's inviting people in to pancakes and cocoa. Just gives you that little bit of extra reach so that I don't have to be really in the crowd and I can move a little bit easier, but I'm still getting into the action where Unger is and where he's moving around. So 85 was the natural choice for that, and then the 35 in the opening shot just really helped open things up a little bit more. Ran the Basecamp VND matte box for pretty much every shot, usually with the 2:5 filter in there. That seems to be the go-to. I rarely ever change filters from that. The only other time I used a different filter, I did use a circular polarizer on the longer shots of the Firefall and the clouds to kind of cut some of the glare, didn't really do anything in the clouds. It did do a little bit on the glare of the waterfall in El Cap, just pulled a little bit of that off. And then an opening shot, I did use the blue morphic filter. I really love that filter. That was just not the shot to use it in. You can tell up at the top, there's just this big fat blue streak because the source from that lantern is so big in the frame that it just turns it into a mess. So I love the blue morphic filter. That was just not the situation to use it. Pretty much every shot that wasn't shot on a long lens was shot using the pivot shoulder rig. I absolutely love that shoulder rig. To be perfectly honest with you, I haven't used many other shoulder rigs, but from what I have used, the pivot is absolutely fantastic. I took it to Africa, I used it in Yosemite, I've used it on pretty much every single shoot I've had since I got the thing. It's been an absolutely fantastic shoulder rig. It fits everything well, it moves well. It's just a super well-built rig. So love the pivot shoulder rig. Other than that, all of the audio that I recorded was either scratch audio straight into the camera, and then Unger was mic'd with a Zoom F2. I had the F6 with me, but didn't really do anything with it. All of the other miscellaneous audio was just scratch audio from the camera. And then as usual for my stuff, I shoot on Nikon. It's the Nikon Z6 II running into an Atomos Ninja 5. So everything is ProRes 422, externally recorded, works great. So in total, during production, the entire time I was down in Yosemite, 4 days, only shot 32 clips. Still 500 gigabytes, so still quite a bit of stuff, because a lot of times when I'm filming stuff like this, I really just kind of let the camera roll, especially in situations like this where I know like I've got maybe 1 or 2 terabytes with me. I'm not gonna run out of memory. So just especially in those sequences where like Unger's inviting people in or down by the river or whatever, just letting the camera run to make sure that I capture everything. No, I'm not gonna lose anything. The camera's always running. I'm not gonna miss a scene. So for me, that's really my MO in these situations, just let the camera run. So I'm coming back with fewer clips, but way longer clips, and that's been a huge benefit. So post-production on this was super minimal and very basic. It's only 2 tracks of audio. It's just Unger's audio and the music. And this thing really fell together because of the music. The song is Belonging by Muted, and it's a song that's used in another film that I love that North Face shot. I believe Renan Orsturk was the cinematographer for that. And I love that film and I love this song. And then I ended up, right before I left for this trip, I found this song on Artlist. So it's a royalty-free song. I could use it in any of my pieces. You can use it in any of yours if you have an Artlist subscription. And so I just kind of dropped this song into the timeline and just began cutting to those like hard hits of the piano and just really like pulling in those sequences one at a time of, cooking, being by the river with intermixing just some of the movement of the clouds. And for me, it was really just a really peaceful, really slow process. And it like truly really just fell together. And I ended up having like just enough footage to make it through the entire length of that song. So post-production, super minimal, really nothing flashy to it, and it really just came together. All right, so what would I change about this film? And I mean, maybe it sounds kind of weird since I didn't really intend to shoot the film anyway, so I didn't really have a goal in mind, but I would say there are 2 things I would want to change with this film. The first one being just my timidness around people. And this is something that I've really come a long way in. I used to be terrible at it. I've been doing work in the homeless communities for a couple of years now, and so that has really helped, grow my confidence in being around people and putting a camera in people's face. But I mean, even in this situation, there's so many people from so many different cultures, and there's so much happening, and it's a little awkward too of, like my friend is just walking around being like, hey, do you guys want pancakes and cocoa? We're making like 200 pancakes over there, So it's a little awkward just for me sometimes just being around people and like filming Unger. And so I think for me, just overcoming that of like, this is what I'm here to do. This is what I want to be doing. Ignore everyone else, forget it. Just do your thing, create the thing you want to create. That's one thing that I wish I could be better at sometimes in those moments. Second thing is really just focusing more on the color grading. I never do really any flashy grading, but this one was definitely super basic. And I would say the main reason is I just kind of got so excited towards the end of like, oh my goodness, like this thing's actually, kind of coming together, and I'm getting like a weird little film out of this that I really didn't pay any attention to the color. And then, I rendered it out and I sent a test to some people and they sent it to some more people. So it was getting some views. So I just ended up opening it up as a public video. And so I was kind of like, well, I can't really go back and do anything with it now. So really maybe just if paying more attention to color would have been something I would have liked to do this film, especially it takes place in just such a beautiful location. So that's how we made the film on the Firefall. Like I said, it's not an award-winning masterpiece. It's really just something for me to go back and watch to remind myself that, you know, I'm small, my problems can be small, and this world is beautiful. So I hope that there are some people out there who get the same out of it, who get some enjoyment and get to see the beauty. I hope you can go see the Firefall. It is an absolutely beautiful phenomenon. If you can get down there, it is wonderful. So what are some things that you do when life gets a little crazy and you need to remember that everything's gonna be okay? Let us know down in the comments below, and until next time.